He was 19 at the time, but he confided to me that when he was 15, that a family member, my aunt specifically, molested him when he was 15. And he was really struggling with it, guilt from it. It just really was eating him up. And he was, getting in a lot of trouble. He ended up getting kicked out of my dad's house because of the trouble he was getting into. And I offered to let him stay with me. And in that time, I kind of really bonded with him, and he shared with me stories of, hearing voices, demons talking to him. He just wanted to sleep all day. And I didn't really know how to handle it. I didn't know what to do. And I was talking to a coworker at work about it, and my friend Rob, and Rob told me, "Hey, your brother sounds like he has what I have. I have paranoid schizophrenia. And do you mind if I just talk to him on the phone?"
Sean Dustin spent time in federal and state prison for drug trafficking and fraud. Upon release in 2006, he had nothing but the clothes on his back, a bag of mail, and legal paperwork. In 2010, he kicked a long-time methamphetamine habit and started the long climb back up the ladder of life. This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. If you want transparency and authenticity, you're in the right place. This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast, and this is Sean Dustin.
What's up? This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast, and I'm your host, Sean Dustin. If this is your first time listening, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. It's good to have you with us this evening. We're going to start off here with, if you are watching this live stream and you like the stuff that I'm using, the app or the program, it's called StreamYard. If you like that, and you want to get one yourself for your show or anything that you do, go ahead down in the description and check out the StreamYard affiliate link there. And actually, all of the links to everything that I'm doing will be available in the description, either on YouTube, Facebook, wherever you're watching this at, the podcast platforms, once this thing actually hits there, which should be tomorrow. And if you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button in the corner and thumbs the video up, please. That will help me out tremendously. If you're watching on Facebook, like and share this. We got a good episode for you this evening. Also, if you're listening on the podcast platforms like iTunes, Spotify, Spreaker, Stitcher, Amazon Music, any of the major platforms, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and subscribe to the show. Through the podcast platforms. That helps me get further reach out there and rank a little bit higher on the platforms themselves. I got to do a shout out right now to Dr. Carmen Johnson. And let's go ahead and roll this for her. She donated the show $100, and just wanted to say thank you to her. We appreciate that here. Also, check her out on episode 97. If you look down below, you will see a signed petition for her. If you go to episode 97, all of her links and everything that she's doing is available there. So go ahead and take a look over there for me, please. And this podcast is actually a marketing leg of my nonprofit organization, which is called Nowhere to Go But Up, Inc. So anything that you donate to the show, and I believe if it's over $250, you will actually get a tax write-off. So this is connected to that as well, and the organization's called Nowhere to Go But Up Incorporated, or Inc. Also, too, let me give a shout out to the places where I've been charting, and it's been kind of interesting to follow that. Norway, let me give a shout out to my listeners in Norway. We're doing at 195. We're ranked there. Japan, what's up, Japan? No, we're at 110. ranked there. New Zealand, I'd love to go to New Zealand. We're ranked at 39 there. And then in Vietnam, I'm ranked 35. So let me give a shout out to all those places: Norway, Japan, New Zealand, Vietnam. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for the support and the listenership. And then in actually society and culture in the United States, I'm ranked number 616. And then globally, I'm ranked number 844. So that's pretty good out of 1,000,000 or 900,000 podcasts that are out there. Whatever that number is, it always keeps growing and changing. So without further ado, let's get to our guest today, which is Nate Glover. And Nate is going to be talking to us about, some issues that he grew up with and has felt or dealt with, his brother committing suicide, being schizophrenic, and dealing with mental illness. So we're going to talk to him about that. What's up, Nate?
Hey, thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, thanks for coming out and joining the show. Let me just get rid of that. So Nate and I met through a Facebook group called VR Poker. So it's a virtual reality Oculus Quest, or it's not the only one. It's just a virtual reality poker game. And I had this crazy idea that I wanted to do a podcast episode in that space virtually and record it as avatars. And it's a cool idea, and I still want to do it. It just didn't work out the way that I wanted to. And so instead he reached out and started listening to the show and reached out to me and asked to be a guest. And so here we go. So let everybody know a little bit about you, Nate, and, what line of work you're in, and, what you want to talk about as far as, your brother's death and mental health.
Yeah, sure. So, I grew up pretty normal life growing up as a kid, and in pretty normal teenage years. But as soon as I graduated high school is when things really kind of took a turn. I was 19 years old, helping a friend put a roof on a shed when I got a call that my stepbrother, who was 14 years old, had just been in an accident. He was riding a go-kart with his girlfriend, and they were hit by a car, and she was killed instantly, and he was in a coma. And so that was my first really tragedy to deal with. I remember going down to Parkland Hospital in Dallas and just, the waiting game while he was, they were trying to relieve the pressure in his brain. And then, his friends started to show up, and I found myself kind of being a comfort to his friends and giving them support, even though I was, it was pretty rough for me too, but it seemed like just natural for me to step into that role. And that was, little did I know that was going to be something that would be pretty common going forward. Several years later, in 2005, my youngest brother, he was going through a lot of issues, and he confided into me that when he was 19 at the time, but he confided to me that when he was 15, that a family member, my aunt specifically, molested him when he was 15. And he was really struggling with it, guilt from it. It just really was eating him up. And he was, getting in a lot of trouble. He ended up getting kicked out of my dad's house because of the trouble he was getting into. And I offered to let him stay with me. And in that time, I kind of really bonded with him, and he shared with me stories of, hearing voices, demons talking to him. He just wanted to sleep all day. And I didn't really know how to handle it. I didn't know what to do. And I was talking to a coworker at work about it, and my friend Rob, and Rob told me, "Hey, your brother sounds like he has what I have. I have paranoid schizophrenia. And do you mind if I just talk to him on the phone?" And so I arranged for them to talk on the phone. And afterwards, Jason told me, he's like, "Hey, I really liked talking to your friend. I really felt like he could relate to me." And I felt like I was making some progress with him. I tried to get him to go to HMR. It was like to get psychological treatment. But the problem is he thought everyone was out against him. Even, the government was against him. I was against him. So there's no way in hell he was going to go take a pill prescribed to him by a government agency. It just wasn't going to happen. And while he was staying with me, his condition just was deteriorated. And I remember one day I picked him up from his job. He bussed tables at a restaurant, and he told me, man, I just felt like just killing myself. And I didn't know how to react to that. I reacted the wrong way. I reacted with anger because I was scared. And the progress that I had made with him just kind of seemed like it started slipping at that point. And I ended up giving him an ultimatum because I was concerned about him. I said, Jason, I really need you to go get treatment if you want to continue staying with me. And so he left. He went to go live with my grandmother. And wasn't long after that when I got the call that he had committed suicide. He had hung himself in my grandmother's garage. And, the one thing that I really regret is how I reacted to him when he told me that, he wanted to kill himself. I wish I would have just listened and just told him that I loved him and not tried to help fix his problems and just been there for him. And so that's a really big lesson that I learned in that. And I would really, at that point I was like, going forward, I just want people that know someone that's going through that similar situation, just let them know, you're not going to fix their problems. They don't want to hear you say you need to get help because they don't want to think they're helpless. They just, the best you can do is just be there for them and love them and hug them. Because good chances are they're probably not going to get the help that they need. Unfortunately, when it's that bad. Later that was 2006, January 18, 2006. And later that year in December, my cousin, who was about my age, the last time I saw him was at Jason's funeral. He sent me an email that just said, it was just like one sentence about, feeling down and depressed. And a few weeks later, I got the call that he died in his sleep. I have some suspicion that it may have been more than that, just because I believe because of the stigma of suicide, I believe that, his family may have been hiding a fact, but, I don't know. But so that was how the year ended, was with another, tragic death, someone I was close to. And then just a year ago, his brother, my other cousin, committed suicide. Went to his dear lease and shot himself. He had just gotten married, had a kid on the way, and he just couldn't handle the stress between his wife and his mom, both, being very possessive, and it was just, he couldn't handle it. And another tragic thing, but one thing I found in all of those instances, at my brother's funeral, at my cousin's funeral, and even online when my other cousin passed, is that I ended up finding myself in the role of comforting friends and just kind of stepping in there. And in fact, after my brother's death, it was 6 months after that I realized I hadn't really done anything about my own grief. I'd been busy, keeping my family comforted and helping my family out, that I hadn't addressed my own grief. And so I joined a support group, and that was really helpful. Just hearing other stories, just being around other people that were going through the same thing that I was going through, and leaving that gave me enlightenment that I needed to do something to actively heal my wound. The phrase, I've written a blog about time, a couple of blogs about time healing all wounds. In essence, it does take time for a wound to heal, but time is not the healer. And with something that severe, you need to actively find things that help you heal. For me, it was the support group. It was writing. It was, I joined Toastmasters, and I gave several speeches on mental health, on suicide awareness, and on grief, and hoping that by helping others that I would also be treating my wound as well. So,
all right. Well, I'm going to, first of all, sorry for all of your losses, man. It's got to be tough to have that many in a family in a short period of time like that. There's a couple of things that I want to talk about within that. One of them being the sexual abuse.
Yeah.
It doesn't always have to be the opposite, a man, abusing
right.
a woman or a child. Yeah. And I think that a lot of people, sometimes they get that misconception when they think of, child abuse or sexual abuse, molestation. They think of it as a man perpetrating that on a child or a female.
Right.
And it goes both ways. It doesn't always have to be that way. I've heard a lot of stories where, a family member or an older woman has molested a younger man, under 18. Yeah. It doesn't matter. If they're underage, they're underage. It's right. Against the law. Yeah. And then the second part of that is the difference between somebody, who's like, I guess you would say normal and doesn't really suffer from severe mental health. Because I think that there's always times in people's lives when you have a down period, where you get down and it's like, oh man, I don't know what I'm going to do. And, you lick your wounds for a little while, but you picked yourself back up and you dust yourself off and you keep going. That's what, I would feel like that's what I do. And I would feel like, I think I'm somewhat normal, right. Whatever that means. But, the difference is that with, people that suffer with mental illnesses, whether, whatever spectrum they're on, it's a constant with them. Right. Like we were talking about this earlier and I've thought about killing myself. Yeah. It's gone through my head, but it also, it as fast as it goes in, I'm like, "Ooh, well, get out of there!" No, that's not an option. Right. And the difference between, someone that's struggling with mental illnesses is they are obsessing on that thought. Until they idolize it or idealize whatever the name that word is, but they just start like fantasizing about it, and then before you know it, there it is. It's done and it's over. And, you're like you said, you don't know what to do, when people are struggling like that. A lot of times they won't even come out and say anything. And even if you do know, it's like, well, what do you do? It's hard to understand where you're coming from when nobody knows where you're coming from.
Right. And this, it's the whole idea that, people think, well, oh, they're just bummed out or they're just, it's just a phase. Well, there's a big difference between being depressed and having depression. Like you said, it's constant. Picture the lowest you've ever been, the darkest you've been, the most impending doom feeling you've had, and picture that 24/7. You cannot escape it. Just imagine the torture that would be. You can't. That's why a lot of times you just want to sleep all day because you cannot deal with it. And that's where I came to terms with, the stage of grief of acceptance. That's the hardest for many people to get through with suicide. For me, what helped me through that stage was really studying what he went through and understanding it, and understanding that he was in physical pain. The mental illness is no different than a physical ailment. We don't, there's no stigma for having cancer. There's no shame in it, but my brother's disease was slowly killing him just like any cancer would. And there's no cure. So I do not, I'd never really held any anger at him for doing what he did, because I see it as no different than, as we were talking about earlier, on September 11th, the famous photo of the falling man jumping out of the building because the flames were closing in. And I see no difference between the flames in my brother's brain were just as real as those flames on September 11th. And he really felt that it was the only way. And, yeah, sure, medication may have helped him, but the problem is he had schizophrenia. He was afraid of medicine. He thought it would be government control, and so yeah, that wasn't going to happen, unfortunately. So,
yeah, that's too bad. So how long have you had your blog, your blog spot?
So I wrote my first blog less than a year after Jason's suicide. And the title of the blog was "Why Didn't I?" And it focused on that moment when I picked him up from work and he told me that he felt like killing himself. And it's why didn't, what are everyone talks about when someone dies, all the things they could have done differently. And for me, it was just, why didn't I hug him? And that, it was just a way for me to get those feelings inside, just, on paper. It was therapeutic for me. And then I ended up writing a few other things about mental illness, fatherhood, racial inequality, just some things that, spontaneously I just really felt the need to write about. So I don't have that many. It's less than 10, and I haven't done anything on there in a while, but I do want to start writing again. So, because I do realize that it really did help me to, put a lot of my thoughts to pen and paper. So.
Yeah, that's kind of what I experienced when I started this podcast. It was, talking to people, relating to them, my story, listening to theirs. It was kind of like a therapeutic thing, that it turned into. And I started realizing that this is probably helping me more than it's helping anybody else, So I was like, well, just keep on rolling with it. Yeah. And, so, yeah, I mean, I would suggest it. Get back to the blog. If you, like I said, if you want to start a podcast, let me know. I'll help you out. Point you in the right direction. 'Cause a lot of people start wanting to start these things, and I didn't realize it. I just thought, I listened to Joe Rogan, and I was like, oh, that looks easy. I'll go do that. I'll go grab myself a microphone and some other stuff, which I ended up overbuying everything, and half of the stuff that I started with I don't even use anymore. But it was like, oh, whoa, okay, yeah, that's not even easy, because then you have to listen to yourself, and you're like, God, I sound horrible. Like, did I really say that? Right. And but I mean, you get through it. It's fun, man. It's a great outlet. It's great to be creative in some way. And I think as people, that's what we're creative by our instinctual nature. We always we're trying to build something, create something, also tear things down as well.
It's interesting what you said about how it was more helpful for you because, for years, people would always tell me, man, I don't know how you stayed strong through all this. And I thought about it and I was like, I don't know either, because I haven't really, done much for myself. But then I realized that by me supporting my peers and helping them through their issues, I think in a way was treatment for myself, and I didn't realize it. Yeah. Because and I remember after when my first cousin died, I went to the house and a lot of his friends showed up, and it's one of those things where everyone's standing around and no one knows what to say, no one knows what to do. But since I'd been in that situation before, I knew what to do. So I just went up to his friends and we just started talking about my cousin. We started telling stories about him, and it had just really got rid of that awkwardness. It ended up being a positive night, as good as it could be. And even at the funeral, one of my uncle's coworkers, my uncle's a fireman, his coworker pulled me aside and said, "Hey, I noticed what you did at the house the other day, and I just really appreciate it. And that was the moment when I realized that I think this is maybe what I'm supposed to do. And as we talked before, just recently, I joined a peer support group at work. I work at a large police station, one of the biggest ones in the country, and they have a program for mental awareness for their officers, because you can imagine the kind of things that they see day in and day out. And even in my position in an admin role, I have the opportunity to see a lot of disturbing things. And so they have a peer support group where if you see that an officer was on a call involving a shooting or a child abuse call or anything that might be disturbing, just call them, pull them aside, say, hey, how are you doing? Just offer them support and point them to, we have some mental health providers that have offered their services for us. And so I interviewed for that a couple of weeks ago, and I really think that this is, I think I have the tools for it. And I think it's important to have that peer support, people that are not necessarily professional help, but just someone just to listen and understand and just to be there for them.
Yeah, I think the peer support there's also a need for mental health professionals.
Yes.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that's not needed at all. But I do see that there is strength in being able to talk to your peers or people that may have been through something, I guess the example that I'm most familiar with is therapeutic communities that are run by former students of those communities, not professionals, because a lot of those times, it's hard for people on my end of it, because I'm on the other side of what you do, or I was, not anymore. Right. But we see police officers, correctional officers, as the enemy. Right. And, any kind of professional that comes at us, it's like, dude, what can you tell me that you learned from a book? Right. Get out of here. It doesn't, whatever you say is going to fall on deaf ears. Mm-hmm. And so the importance for us in the population that I serve, and, I serve the whole population, but I mean, the people where I'd come from, it's really impactful when somebody that's been through it is trying to walk you through it. Right. And peer support and mentorship is I'm a really big firm believer in it.
Yeah. And that's exactly where I feel about, the whole, the suicide awareness, or some people say suicide prevention, or I've been through it. I've been through the grief. I've been through the not having the answers to the questions. I've been through all the stages of grief multiple times. And so I don't have the professional education on that, but I feel like because I've been there that I can relate and hopefully can make a difference.
A lot of times it's just as simple as being a soundboard for somebody, and letting somebody vent or unload on you without the threat of judgment, Right. Yeah. And when somebody knows that, sometimes all you have to do is just be an ear or a shoulder.
And don't try to fix their problems necessarily. Mm-hmm. A lot of times, and that's where, especially as men, we want to, help, try to fix their problems. When my brother would tell me what was going on, I would tell him where he was wrong and what he needed to do. But that's not what he needed at the time. He just needed someone to listen and just to let them know that you care about them. And that's the biggest lesson I've learned in life is don't necessarily try to fix everyone's problems. I still do it. It's habit, but I'm mindful of it now, and I understand that that's not the best the best approach to it.
Yeah, when being mindful too. I mean, that's huge, because once you learn about something and you realize where you're supposed to be, our natural tendencies tend to like override everything because it's a subconscious thing.
Right.
And so being mindful is really important. Like there's a lot of things that I'm learning that like, oh yeah, I'm kind of this way. And I think I don't even notice there's some things that I do that I have to be mindful of to like not do that.
Right.
You know, I got, there's one that got me in trouble the other day. I really don't even realize it. Like if a pretty girl walks by, I'm like, I look. And even if I'm with my girl, you know, it's just so second nature to me that I don't even realize that it's happening.
Right.
And so I'm like, oh, yeah, I'll be a little bit more mindful of that. Yeah, that is really rude, and I apologize. And that was hard to do, man. That was hard to suck it up and not try to make an excuse for why that happened, because I was embarrassed. You know, I was like, oh, man, yeah, that's kind of a dick move. But, you know, being mindful is definitely an important thing. So do you want to pivot a little bit to a different subject?
Sure.
In this one, we're going to talk about virtual reality.
Okay.
And that because I'm not a very big video game player. Like I never had a Nintendo. I never had any of those other ones. I may have had a Wii at one point, but it wasn't mine. I played it. I didn't get involved in video games until virtual reality came out. The first one I had was a Vive Pro. I liked all the graphics with that. It was pretty sick. I mean, especially in the VR poker room, you see all of the stuff. You know, it's pretty limited with the Quest unless you actually plug it into your computer. But I didn't like the Vive because you were stuck to things. Like I was tethered. You had to set up all the tracking system and everything else, and it was just like so much to do. And unless you had a dedicated room for it, then you didn't have to worry about breaking all that down. But when you're sharing your household with a kid and a significant other, having your stuff in the living room everywhere is not really going to work out. So the next one that I got was a Quest, and I loved the Quest because you could just move around with it, and it was so much more friendly. Then I started playing it. And how real it is, unless somebody plays it, they will not understand how real it is. Right. Like real to the point when you're playing with the props in the game, like from smoking the cigarettes in there, I will catch myself
exhaling,
like as if I feel like I'm smoking.
Right.
Like it is tricking my mind into thinking that I'm really smoking.
Right.
And so I was just like, man, I was blown away by it. And then the fact of because there's other games that you can play and they're really cool, but I think the VR poker one is the best one that I've played for social interaction, because you get to talk to people all over the world and ask them, especially when COVID was breaking out. So, hey, what's it like? What's happening over in your part of the woods? You know, there are some people that didn't want to talk about stuff like that, but you'll get involved in some games where people are willing to just be chatty and you know, be social and, you know, share things that are happening with each other's areas. What's your experience with it?
So, yeah, very, very similar. So, for the last few years, me and my dad and a few friends, we would meet every 3 months and actually play a $20 cash poker game. It was kind of a guy's night out. It was therapy. It was just, you know, it's nothing serious, just something fun to do. And it was a good stress relief night. But, you know, obviously when COVID hit, that all stopped. And I've had the Quest for a couple of years, but last year I really started playing poker even more. And it's just exactly what you said. I remember sitting at a table one time, and there were 8 of us at the table, and all 8 of us were from a different country. I thought that was just so amazing. It was France, Germany, Italy, Portugal, Brazil. It was so just and everybody was talking in English, so we had really neat conversations. We have had a lot of conversations about COVID and how other countries are dealing with it. I remember talking to people in Australia during the wildfires that they had. So yeah, very similar issue. And unfortunately, though, I think that VR is still a niche market. I don't really see it catching on as much as we would hope it would, just because I think a lot of people now like to be, they like to have their phone out when they're gaming, or they like to be, kind of aware of what's going on. And when you have that headset on, there's someone could break into your house and you wouldn't even know it. Like you're totally in another place.
Yeah, it's definitely not something you want to be playing when you have your kids around. That's for sure. Like if no one else is around and it's just you and your kid, you don't want to be playing it because you're moving your arms around. Yeah. You could have a bad accident, smack them on the side of the head or something, man. But
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah. I was watching. Did you see that one? Are you in the Oculus one too, or just the VR poker?
Oh yeah, no, I'm in that group as well.
So did you see that one video where they put it on the kid and it's like a what are those things called that the undead zombies?
The zombie shooter game?
Yeah. So they put it on their kid, and it was a little kid, like I'm gonna say probably 2.5, 3 years old. And he literally started screaming, threw it down, ran right into the wall and bounced back. And I was like, oh my God,
yeah,
poor kid, man.
Yeah, I've actually spent some time looking at several of the VR videos. One of my favorites is a guy was doing a demo at a mall, and it was a climbing game. So he's got his virtual reality on, he's climbing, and he literally falls flat on his face. But that's weird, especially when you first start playing VR. If you're in there for a couple hours and you take it off, you're like, whoa, where am I? Because you're right. It can be even though the graphics are not great, there's still some sense of realness to it because you're immersed, you're in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and your fascinating. You're still moving your hands. You can see hands, and you're moving hands. So it's like, okay, yeah, this feels like I'm really doing it. You've got the props in the game. You're shooting stuff. You're fist bumping people, and it vibrates. Yeah, and it really feels real to me, to the point where I think that they're going to be using this at some point, because I think it would be excellent for training.
Oh yeah,
training people to do repetitive motions. You know what I mean? Is if you're doing it like maybe in a warehouse or on an assembly line or something, to get training on, or it could be anything.
Military training or any kind of special ops where you have to simulate something that you would not be able to simulate in real life.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep.
Because even on the shooting games that I play, for example, when you reload a gun, you have to physically, pull the magazine off, put another magazine on, and pull back the slide. It's insane. I was like, that's a lot to just reload a gun, and I'm just used to hitting a button to reload. Yeah,
I'm not very good at those first person shooter games. Yeah. I bought one called Onward, and it was like I get smoked super fast. Yeah, and it's no fun when they kill you that quick. That's why I was never really into video games, because all of my relatives would have them and I'd go and play and I sucked. And so it was like they were really good. And so they would just kill me quick. And I'm like, dude, this is fun for you, but it's not fun for me. Like, I'm not playing this game no more.
Yeah.
So how old is your how many kids do you
got? 2 boys. They're 8 and 4 years old.
Okay. Yeah. I've got a 3.5-year-old. A little over 3.5 now, but definitely it changed my life. I'll say that much.
Yeah, it is, and I even one of my blogs was about kind of my experience of having a kid and just kind of realizing, there's no training manual for it. And so what I did is I went online actually, and I typed in 10 steps to being a good dad or whatever. And I found all these articles on it, but I was like, I just want to corner it down to, 3 or 4 really good things. So I sent my dad a list, because my dad is a role model of mine. I thought he was a great father. So, he respects his dad as well. So I sent him the list of 10 things. I said, hey, just pick out four important ones. And so he picked out four that he said that his father was to him. And it was, let's see if I can remember all four now. It was being supportive, unconditional love, unconditional love. I'm blanking out now, but it was funny is the four things that he picked were also the same four things that I admired in my dad as well. And it's just about a quality time was the other one. And I just think, and so when I posted that blog, I was expecting to get all these responses about, oh, wow, I can totally relate. Yeah. But instead the responses I got were, yeah, my dad was old school. Yeah, I can't really relate. Or I got a lot of people saying, yeah, I had old school parents. And I realized that, my granddad, probably broke the mold in a time where it was normal to be that old school, hard, father. And I think I think I see that changing now. But yeah, I think it's just real important just to, to really be involved in this, to spend time with them and support them no matter what. If or whatever route that they want to take, even it's, a lot of parents want to relive their childhood through their kids. Like I played sports when I was a kid. My oldest son is not really into sports at all. So I realized I'm probably not going to be able to coach baseball with him, but whatever he's into, I want to learn it. I want to be, all about it. And I think that's hard for some parents for some reason. But and then the unconditional love, that one really gets me because I have friends whose parents have disowned them. I have one friend went to high school with. He's transgender. His parents have disowned him. I have another friend who was disowned because he's no longer a Christian. And I can't understand that. I cannot understand how a parent could not have unconditional love for their own child. It blows my mind. I don't understand it.
What's the rules, right? I mean, it's like, dude, those are yours.
Yeah.
You raised them, and that's not an option. I mean, even if if I had a son and he went to jail or prison or something, it's still, I mean, you have some responsibility in how they turn out, and not all the time. I mean, I guess there's some things that are out of your control, but I mean, those are the rules, man. Those are your kids, and you should love them and throughout whatever it is that they're going through. I have a trans sibling, and that was difficult, but still my family.
Right.
It's still the same person that I grew up with, just different now.
Right.
And I may not understand it, and it's not for me to understand. My only job is to support my family member in the best way that I know how.
Right.
And not, judge, if it makes you happy and you feel like you're a whole person now because of, that you are where you are, then, more power to you. At the end of the day, you just want people to be happy, right? Happy, healthy, and prospering. So,
I have, and I have another brother who probably has a more similar background as you do, and he still does. But I always think if he didn't have a family that loved him and cared him, my dad, help him out when he needs help, and if he didn't have that, he would have been homeless a long time ago, and I doubt, it's a good chance that he wouldn't be alive right now. And so even with all the things that he's done, my parents are still very accepting of him and love him. And it just totally blows my mind. That's when a parent can just say, I have nothing to do with you because you're because you're gay or because you believe in this or because you've done this crime. That gets me. It's to a level that I just don't understand.
Yeah, my dad did.
Yeah.
My mom has always been there for me, but my dad, my whole father's side of the family are police officers. So,
oh wow, okay.
It was, when I was going through my stuff, there was a point where he's just like, wash my hands of you. Yeah. And, 15, I think it was 15 or 16 years went by, and maybe 5 years after I got out, I guess he was looking through some Facebook stuff, found me on Facebook and saw that my life was going well, and reached back out and said, okay, well, it looks like you're fixed. Yeah. So, I mean, irregardless of how I feel about it, I would much rather have my dad in my life than have to, because if I was going to make a big deal about it, then it probably would have pushed him the other way. Right. And so I just, I made my peace with it, and, I feel the way that I feel about it. But I mean, it's to me, it's not worth not having that relationship anymore.
Right.
To get the satisfaction of saying you were wrong, and I need you to admit that. Right. And I don't need that. I'm cool. I'm cool with it. I get it. And let's just move on with it. So here's one thing also too, we got a lot of similarities in our life because we're both in Toastmasters.
Right. Yes.
I forgot about that little fact.
It was Toastmasters completely changed. Before I joined Toastmasters, there was no way in hell I could even I would have meetings with my team at work of 8 people that I knew, and I could barely do it without my knees shaking or being nervous. Just a daily, brief in the morning. Or if I got pulled over by an officer, even though I wasn't doing anything wrong, I would be extremely nervous to where they would think I was hiding something. I would always end up getting my vehicle searched because they swore I was hiding something. And I could, even phone calls at work, conference calls, the whole time I would just be, please don't call my name. Please don't call my name. There would be no way in hell that I would be having this conversation now, 5 years ago. But just the repetitiveness of it, maybe, and the support of others that are not judging you, they're helping you. The practice, it just amazing how quickly that I was able to just go up and give speeches without being extremely nervous. And I ended up within a year, I won a local contest, got second place in the next level, and then last year I won the local and won the next level. So it's just something that I would never even imagine a few years ago. So yeah, I think the Toastmasters is a great program for speaking, for leadership training as well. And it's not that I'm not doing a commercial for them, but the prize is insane. It's, it's hardly any money at all compared to like a Carnegie program. But the biggest thing I learned in Toastmasters was more than speaking was listening. Because when you're in a Toastmasters meeting, only one person's speaking and the other 15, 20 people are listening, and you're having to, focus on what they're saying, and because there might be questions at the end of it. And so I think, it really helped me be a better active listener. And it helped me realize that communication, listening is one of the biggest parts. So,
I used to, I experienced that as well. I remember when I would be in a conversation and it's like, I'm thinking about what I want to say before they've even stopped talking. Like I'm trying to figure out where I'm going to fit into the conversation, which you're not listening.
Right.
You're trying to strategize when you're going to say what you're going to say, how you're going to say it, versus just listen, pause, respond. I said a lot of ums and ahs and all of these things before, and I've realized it because when you have a podcast and you have to go back and edit your stuff, I would hear all of the mouth noises. I would hear all of the dumb phrases that I don't like you know what I mean, or right. Or this. It's like, so everybody has one. Everybody has like their little go-to thing that they say.
Right.
There's this one. So I said this to say that. I hear that a lot. I hear there's just so many that I hear when I just go back and listen.
Yeah, it's funny because in Toastmasters they're tallying all that up. So at the end of the meeting, they're like, Nate, you had 5 3 so's, 2. So you really become aware of it, and especially when you're listening. And now, it's gotten to the point where I'm sure you can relate. I can't even watch someone speak on TV without evaluating their speech. The president might be on stage, and I'm counting all the the ohs. But
politicians are the worst.
Yeah,
they are the worst. I just posted something on my wall on Facebook with Nancy Pelosi doing something, and it was like, "Are you kidding me?" It's like, shouldn't you at least, if nothing else, if you're going to be addressing the country, shouldn't you at least be a decent speaker and not sound like a drunk teacher?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I definitely agree. I think Toastmasters, for the money and the cost and what you get out of it and the connections that I've made through it, I've made a lot of connections locally, with certain things, with real estate. Like I'm a licensed drone pilot. I'm a painter too, so I did residential painting for a long time and before I got in all kinds of trouble. And, so, I mean, there's definitely a lot of opportunities that I've gotten just from being in there. So I couldn't, their competitions are happening, actually pretty soon. And I wasn't there. I haven't finished 2 of the pathways yet. So I have to, I'm not eligible. I don't think I would have anyways.
You don't think you would have competed?
No, I wouldn't have competed yet just because I don't feel like I've been in long enough.
No, I had not been in that long on my first one. No, I think it's so the local contest is pretty. That's not that bad because it's the same people that you speak in front of weekly or biweekly anyway. But when I went to the district meeting, it was intimidating because you had people traveling from all over the country to in there, and you had it was definitely nerve wracking, but again, that was also it was a good experience. But it was intense.
That's cool. Well, hopefully, after I get mine done and next year I can do it. I would feel comfortable if I'd waited a year still.
Right.
So we're going to pivot one more time because there's one thing I want to cover, and we're at about 52 minutes here. But you have actually taken the vaccine.
Yes.
You've taken the first dose, and you just recently took the second dose. Which one was it, the Moderna or the – do you know which one it was?
Yeah, it was the Moderna. Yeah. Okay. So I had the opportunity pretty early on because, they were – the first responders and fire, police and fire were getting a shot at it. And since I have interactions with the public, they said, I could go get the vaccination as well early on. So I got the first dose, and it was no different than, flu shot. I had some soreness in my arm. And but the second dose I got a couple of days ago. Then everyone's like, "Oh, you're going to have horrible symptoms. It's going to be bad." If I was fine that day, same thing, sore arm. But the next morning, I woke up with headache, pressure, cold chills the whole day. I was miserable the whole day. Ended up having a fever. So yeah, it was one day of being miserable. But if it's going to prevent me from getting COVID, then I think that's a fair trade-off. So.
Yeah, we're probably in different camps.
Right.
I'm personally, I follow a lot of different alternative media stuff. I follow a lot of the doctors that got banned off of social media. Remember the frontline doctors that came out?
Yeah.
I follow her and listen to Dr. Simone. I can't remember what her last name is, but I mean, she's actually, and I didn't realize this, but she's a sort of a physician, an emergency room physician, but she's also a lawyer. And I mean, everything that she's talking about and everything I saw on their website and everything else, it concerned me. And I didn't feel like I don't feel like I want to be a part of that early adopting group that, you, of course, you didn't have a choice. It's tied to your work. You had to, right? Or was it voluntary?
No, I didn't have to.
Okay.
But I chose to because, I have, my father-in-law has COPD. And so, if I were to get COVID and then if, my wife got it and when she was visiting her parents, if he got it, it would not be a good thing if he got it. So for me, it was the responsible thing to do is to get the vaccine. And I've just seen, and, in my line of work, I see, how many calls come over of, people that are dying and they have COVID. So it's hit home to me. My dad had a really good friend that he worked with, die from COVID. We had someone at the police station that I work at. He was in his late 30s. He passed away. So, I think I understand the realness of it. And I trust the science of it. And I remember when those frontline doctors came out, and thing is you had, these very small handful of scientists going against what the science community is saying. So I don't know how to put stock into what they're saying without evidence. It was all, I'm going to go with the majority of the science when it comes to that.
Well, yeah, I definitely agree that both, I didn't understand either okay, well, how could one side say one thing and the other side say the other thing?
Right. And
so it could go both directions though. You know what I mean? It could be, I don't know, man, there's just a lot of crazy stuff going on about it. Like, I'm not here to shame anybody, right. If that's what you feel that you wanted to do and that's the best decision for you and your family through your own, whatever that is, research and the things that you're listening to and you're following, then by all means, that's, more power to you. And I think that everybody should have that kind of same attitude. It's like, look, it's your body, it's your choice until maybe they make it not your choice. Hopefully that doesn't get to that and enough people, take it, and adopt it early. I'm not going to adopt it early. I'm going to wait for, at least, a while down the road and see, because there's, things that I've read and stuff that it just makes me not, I don't trust the government. Yeah. So,
and I can understand that, especially when it was developed so quickly. It did not go through the normal processes that we normally go through to develop a vaccine. So no, I understand the hesitation on it for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be some that do and some that don't. And, if you're one of these people like me who wants to stop the divide in society on no matter what it is, because it's like every corner we turn these days, it's, something that's going to divide us, with the masks, and it was the vaccine, and it's the right and the left. And there's always something that puts us making us like go against each other. And, it's, that's one of my things is I really get frustrated with the whole, especially in the political world, the demonizing of someone who has a different opinion than you. And I think and a lot of it comes down to communication. We're not listening to the other side. We're not trying to see their perspective. Like right now we had a talk about the vaccine and you heard my side, I heard your side, and we get each other. But a lot of people don't want to do that. They just want to demonize. And, the people that aren't wearing masks, they're selfish and they're horrible, or, or the Republicans are bigots and the leftists are socialists, communists.
all these keywords and just the whole demonizing. And that's what I always tell people is that we're all the same. We just have different views. There's a saying that I saw online that I've kind of adopted is the left and the right wing are part of the same bird. The fact that we can have different opinions and express them freely is what's so great about, our country. If we all thought the same way, there would never be change.
No.
And so I really embrace the fact that we have different opinions. And I hate just the demonizing of the other, of someone who does not agree with you. I think it's more important to sit down and have conversations about it.
Yeah, because when you silence people and you take away their voice and their ability to give their opinion or their perspective, I mean, how do you combat bad speech? You do it with better speech.
Right.
And you give everybody a chance to hear, because if somebody's out there, talking nonsense, you give them enough time to talk nonsense and people are going to go, oh, yeah, but let's screw that. That's definitely not the direction I want to go. And they'll go to the better idea. I mean, it's kind of like a free market. If something's meant to succeed, it's going to succeed. And that's not going to succeed will fail. And whatever else will come into its place. That's a free market, right?
Right.
It works itself out, and you let the public be the deciding factors, because if somebody likes something, they're going to go to it. And if they don't, they won't. The market will tell you if you're good or bad.
Yeah.
And we haven't had that in a long time, We're living in a little bit of a socialist. It's socialist for the rich, or socialism for the rich when they're getting bailed out.
I agree. Yeah.
When the billionaires are not allowed to fail, and the government bails them out. I mean, that's socialism, isn't it? I mean, if you're on welfare, that's socialism, right?
Right.
Because it's the government not allowing you to fail by giving you money and support and everything else. Well, it goes the same way when they do it for the billionaires.
Yeah.
And I think it's really funny with this whole thing that just came up with the GameStop, how it's like, it's almost, to me, it reminds me of like an abusive person that's trying to hide the fact that they're an abusive person, right? And so when they were out with their significant other, they're in front of the public and they're trying really hard not to be that asshole and say the thing, you know what I mean, or tell their wife to shut up or just be rude in front of people, right? But to me, it was sort of like that. And they got caught slipping, because when they started bleeding out billions, they started screaming and they outed themselves and halted the trading, made some calls and halted everything,
right,
and stopped the bleeding. What?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You just pulled the curtain back, man.
Right.
We just saw who the wizard was.
This is what should happen in a free market. Yeah, the little man should be able to do the same exact thing as the hedge funds.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so to me, that was like, an abusive person getting caught in front of everybody going, like he's like trying to chastise his wife. What did you fucking, and all of a sudden he didn't realize that everybody's watching him. It's like, oh,
yeah. It's going to be interesting for sure to see where this all goes. As at the same time as it's fun to see, the hedge funds fail. I've got 401k. I don't want the stock market to completely fail, but this is definitely exposed it as a system that is very flawed, and it's not. There's some issues if people can sell stock that they don't own by short selling. In no other aspect in life can you sell something that you don't own. You know, it doesn't. I don't understand it. It doesn't make sense. But
yeah. All right. Well, we're at about an hour, and
Yeah.
I think we've covered quite a bit in this conversation. So if you want to follow Nate, we've got his Instagram, or not Instagram, but his Twitter handle there. I also had up the blog post that he does as well. And yeah, if you got anything else that you want to plug, go ahead and do that now. Otherwise, we can roll this out.
No, that's about it, man. I really appreciate you having me. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it. I appreciate your honesty and your openness and sharing your story with myself and the listeners and everybody else. And also, too, if you're out there and you're listening right now still, and you, I need you to subscribe. You know, on whatever platform you're on, that would really help me out. And also, too, if you want to connect with the show, go ahead and catch the link tree. And that's actually available in the show notes, and everywhere else that I'm available it'll be in the show notes on the podcast platforms, and it'll be in the descriptions on YouTube and Facebook. So I guess with that being said, we're out of here.
All right. Good night.
All right. Good night, brother.
You've been listening to the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. Sean is a single dad, a union blue-collar guy, and he spent time in federal and state prison for drug trafficking and fraud. When he was released from prison in 2006, all he had was the clothes on his back, a bag of mail, and some paperwork. Since then, he's turned his life around and shares the struggles and successes on this podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we hope you were moved. To connect to the show, book a guest spot. For merch, Patreon, PayPal, and social media links, go to linktr.ee/nowhere to go but up. On Instagram at Nowhere to Go But Up Now. On Twitter at But Up Now. On the YouTube channel at Nowhere to Go But Up Podcast. See you next time.